Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to our Global Education Hangout. I am Kim Bitch from the Educator's Spin on It, and today I have two special guests with me that are going to teach us as teachers and as parents how to create a global classroom using something very special they've created for us. So first I want to introduce Becky Morales. She blogs at Kid World Citizen, and I just want you, Becky, to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Becky. I'm an ESL teacher part-time, and I also have 5 kids. I have 2 daughters, biological, and then we have a son adopted from China and another son adopted from Ethiopia, and we have another son that we're fostering, and my husband's from Mexico. So we kind of have this multicultural world within our house, and I'm trying to teach my kids about the world, about their heritage cultures, but also just to be compassionate global citizens. And I met Houma on Twitter. I write Kid World Citizen, where I share activities that you can do at home or at school to teach your kids about world cultures and global learning. And Houma and I just wrote a book this past year. It got published called the Global Education Toolkit, where we share ideas for teachers and parents to incorporate global learning into the classroom for K-5, so for the younger kids, because it seems like there are a lot of resources for high school, but we haven't tapped into the younger kids, where I believe it really should start with the younger kids.
I could not agree more. So that's why I'm really thrilled that you guys created this curriculum. And I want to also introduce to you Homa Tavangar, who writes at growingupglobal.net. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Homa.
Thanks, Kim. It's great to join you today. So I'm Homa Tavangar, and I'm the author of Growing Up Global, Raising Children to Be at Home in the World, as well as the Global Education Toolkit for Elementary Learners with Becky. My work in global education really started as looking at what parents can do to raise global citizens, and really as a parent, I have 3 daughters. I was looking for resources that would help me as a parent, and this is about 11 years ago I started this journey, and it's sort of a new direction from another career that I had in business and international business development. And since then, it's sort of taken on a life of its own to be really focused on education. And the parent role in education is very tied into that, but I work with a lot of different organizations and schools on how they can infuse global competencies, global perspectives into any type of work, any type of learning and community building that they may be doing. And it's been a lot of fun to work with Becky and to develop the toolkit and talk about it. And with Back to School, we're really excited to see all the global creativity that people may be putting into their classrooms.
Thank you again for being here. All 3 of us kind of connected through the Multicultural Kid Blogger group, and is actually a site that we'd love for you guys to go and find tons of resources, and I'm really glad that that community is there to really be available for teachers and parents as well to find resources. It is back to school time, and that's kind of why we're here today, is we really want to talk to teachers and parents on how can you set up your classroom or even your home after school to ensure that you've created an environment for global education. So do you have any tips for that for us? Maybe we'll start with Becky.
Sure. So I think that when teachers are planning out their year, we're getting all of this information bombarding from above, telling us what we need to teach. You know, you need to teach math, and you need to teach English, and we need to get reading up and writing scores. And the social studies and the global learning aspect kind of gets pushed to the side because it seems like it should be this separate entity. But in fact, what we are trying to kind of encourage teachers to do is to incorporate the global learning into the lessons that you're already going to be delivering to your classes. So in reading, using multicultural books. In science, when you're talking about biomes, you're talking about the rainforest. You start bringing in resources from the actual Brazil and Costa Rica and Indonesia. If you're talking about farms, you can look at farms from around the world. If you're talking about the water cycle, you can show how, you know, it snows in the Andes and it travels down into the Amazon. And so what we try to do in our book is show that throughout your regular curriculum that you're already going to be teaching, you can integrate mini global lessons into the classroom. And I think from a parent's point of view, I do the same thing when my kids come home and they're learning about mountains, landforms, something like that, something that all second graders have to do. I'll start taking out books and show them, you know, there's not only the Rocky Mountains, but let's look at in China, let's look at the border and we can see the tallest mountains in the world and look at Mount Everest. And so I think that we can supplement what they're doing at school as parents, and as teachers you can integrate it into lessons that you're already going to be teaching. And something that I like about this book is that I think maybe 20 years ago we thought of social studies as this very separate class, that kids learn social studies in social studies class, and that was kind of all the global learning that kids would do. But what I love about this book is that there are so many opportunities, even in writing. What about pen pals in another country? Or if you're talking about math, what about talking about time zone differences or currency changes? So I think it's exciting because the whole day can really be filled with global lessons. It doesn't have to be this separate day, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays for a half an hour you're going to learn about social studies. It can really be across the whole day.
Good answer. Homa, do you have anything to add to what Becky said?
Sure. I think that as we're thinking of back to school, I love this idea that's really been taking hold about teachers thinking about the first 5 days. What's the footprint that you're going to set up and the tone that you set to start your year? So look around the classroom. Look around the visual cues that a teacher is setting up in the classroom. Is there a globe or a map? Are there books that are displayed that show diverse perspectives? Are there posters that display that? Do you have perhaps, you know, if you're depending on the literacy level of your classroom, could you have signs that are multilingual? All of these are the cues that you're setting up that show we love the world and we are in this class to explore and get ready to embrace the world, and this is such an exciting adventure. So the cues that you set up at the very beginning can tell your students when they enter that room, they are basically opening the doors really wide to the whole world. And I mean, that's why we wrote a book on it, because there are so many different ways to show that you are tuned into the world. And so, for example, our multicultural book list has over 300 book ideas that represent every continent, every perspective, and there are some wonderful resources out there, and it can feel very overwhelming. So hopefully resources like the book list help teachers to get started and librarians to suggest good books to get started. But it's almost like a challenge and a brainstorm. I also think the collaboration with your fellow teachers, whether they're in your building or your PLN through Twitter or whatever, you know, wide open network that teachers may have, ask them, brainstorm on ideas for the classroom. So, you know, the world map rug to also another thing that's really important is learning the names of the children in the class and making sure you can pronounce them before day one. I'm one of those kids who I knew when the teacher got to the list of names and they got to my name, I would cringe because I knew they could not pronounce my name, and so I would be ready to correct them. And what a gift to know your children's names in the classroom, know how to pronounce them, and not create that cringe first day feeling. So those are little signs that show that you care, that you're going to have a global experience. I also think I wrote a piece for Edutopia on empathy that's been passed around a lot. as one of their back-to-school pieces. And I think that I call it the most important back-to-school supply. And so there are ways to prepare your class as an empathy classroom, and I think that's a global classroom as well.
And something as simple as that is just going to last year's school teacher and asking, you know, can you just really quickly tell me how to say this name, and is there anything I should know that might be able to enhance my curriculum this year through global education in my classroom? Like, that's a great way to network among teams. And as you were talking, I thought about, I used to work with a few teammates where we would actually end up switching classes as we focused on different things and materials, because I know some of us are limited on budgets and things that we can have. So perhaps the whole year you don't necessarily need X global rug. You can share it with your neighbor and pass it along to give as you build up your resources. I was excited this summer. One of my close friends, her school was able to get on their PE court both a U.S. map and then also the continent world globe onto their court.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's so much fun. It was fun to see the process, and that was through their PTA. That way they were able to do it. So PTAs, PTOs are great resources for finding money as you're trying to build up your classrooms with resources. I know our school does many grants where teachers can apply for it through the PTA. So that's a great question. Our next one is really, here we are as a teacher trying to build up the resource that we have. How do you go about reaching out to parents as volunteers and finding resources within your community?
Mm-hmm. So I'll take that. I think a couple of things. We dedicate a lot of space in the Global Education Toolkit to enhancing parent involvement, and we think that the volunteers that you can potentially get on board at your school are some of the best resources that any school can have. And a lot of times we see in schools that the volunteers are sort of the same group of maybe 10 people. Not that they're purposefully excluding anybody, but it's hard for many people from different cultures. Maybe they didn't have a volunteer culture where they grew up, or their English is not their first language, they're not as confident in that, or whatever reasons, they're working during the day. So many reasons that the volunteers are often limited when it comes to anything at school. And we see this as a wonderful global learning opportunity. So not only do you contact either the families or last year's teacher to know how to pronounce the child's name, but you can also contact them to learn about what would they like to do. Do they have any special skills or expertise or experiences or places they've lived that they'd like to share in the class? And we have a sample letter to go home for families to almost take an inventory of what people are willing to do or interested in doing. And unless you ask, you don't know that you have potentially a wealth of resources. And sometimes certain families are seen as not helpful or more needy, or I don't know, whatever it might be. And some of it is simply because they haven't been asked. So you may find that they have a musical background or culinary experience or travel experience, languages, another school somewhere that they're connected to that you could Skype or Google Hangout with. And all of a sudden, the world opens up through those people that you hadn't seen as your wealth. And one of the other things that gets in the way, and we spend a lot of time talking about in the Global Education Toolkit, is that communication is not a one-size-fits-all. For some people, they may need a phone call. For others, it's a Facebook group or email or a printed piece of paper. So there are many ways to reach out to families, and that is often cultural as well. So if you're constantly sending emails and you don't hear back from people, there's a reason for that. And it's often, the reason is not that the parents don't care about what's happening with their kids. It's because they may communicate in a different way. So we address a lot of those issues, and as a result, the volunteer pool can really expand. And Becky's school has some great experiences, thanks to Becky's initiative, where they did that. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
So our school is unique to the other schools that I worked at before. The school where my kids go is about 60% Asian, 20% African American, maybe another 20% Hispanic. It's very, very diverse, and it seems like about half of the children were born in another country. I would say about 50% of every class. And so because we have so many people from around the world, I don't know if Americans really know this, that volunteering at school is a very American ideal. That doesn't happen in Mexico, that doesn't happen in India, that doesn't happen in many other countries around the world. And so when the parents are coming here, they don't even know that that's even an option. I remember talking to one mom, and I was saying, well, you should just go eat lunch with your daughter. And she had no idea that she could go eat lunch at school, that it was open. So what we did at our school to try and get more international families involved is we have a Meet the Teacher, which a lot of schools have, and I set up a table in the cafeteria. And this was a couple years back when we were first starting our international club. We had a really large banner, and it said, do you know how to say friend in another language? And so tons of people were coming over to our table because they wanted to show that they knew how to say it. And they were writing it down on a list for us. And I was telling them we're advertising for the international club. We'd like to get more parents involved to help bring cultural lessons into the class. And no one knew what it really meant. I didn't even know what we were going to be doing yet. But I started gathering emails. It was the most popular table. People were coming that couldn't speak any English. They were so excited, like, I can say friend in another language. And they were coming over and writing it down, and we gathered all the emails. And what we did with that at our first meeting is we made a huge bulletin board display of cutout letters saying friend in all the different languages that were at our school, which was like 70 languages or something crazy. And we put it up, and not only were the parents so proud that they actually, that they got to participate in something at school and it was hanging up for the rest of the year, they got to show their kids, but even the moms, it was mostly moms who didn't speak a word of English, were able to make their portion of the bulletin board, and then they were able to show their kids that. And I think because of the camaraderie, it almost became a support group for international families. So we would meet together and discuss for International Week, or we do a program called Geography Stars. We also do National Geographic Week in November. Now this year they added on International Literacy Day in September we're going to be in charge of. So we do all these separate programs, and moms who have never volunteered feel comfortable because they know that we're a welcoming group, and we want people of other cultures. It doesn't matter if you don't speak any English. And now it's turned into this great support group, and we help the teachers a lot. They will email us, we're studying India, can you bring in some objects for our kids to pass around the class, like a show and tell? Or we just studied something for science they were doing, and they wanted to know if someone from China could speak about some river that they were learning about. So it turns into this now network between the teachers and the parents. And now we're in the 3rd or 4th year of it. What's exciting is that they've kind of graduated, and these parents now are helping the carnival. They're helping with field day. They kind of feel like, oh, now we understand how this volunteering works, and now they're going on to other committees. They're still staying with me. I make them promise that they're going to stay in my group. But it's so cool to see, now one of the leaders of Carnival, who's from Iran, and it was one of her first time volunteering was with me. And I'm like, oh, yay. I think that that's a great way to get parents involved, is really the welcoming feeling, the warm community, and slowly building. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. One of the things that Becky mentioned is the Geography Stars that her school has been doing as a before-school club, and some schools do it as an after-school club. It was devised by a mom who's a volunteer in Austin, Texas, Sharon Deal, and we share the materials that were used at Becky's school on Geography Stars, as well as Sharon's experience at her school in Austin in the toolkit. So that's an example of, from A to Z, we have all the steps on how to set up a Geography Stars club, and it might just be 20 minutes before the school day. It may not be such a huge commitment, and that's another place that a lot of parents get involved. And I love what I'm hearing from Becky. There's really been a cultural change in their school.
And the Geography Stars is so fun because we do it before school, and we have dads come in. It's so great. You don't usually see dads volunteering in school. It's from 7:30 to 8 in the morning. We do an 8-week program, and dads and grandparents come in. It's so cool.
I think you've capped some magic in the programs that you've created, Becky, so I'm excited that the two of you got all these ideas down in your book. And I forgot to mention that you guys are giving away a copy of your book for all of basically those that are watching right now, and we're going to keep it open for the whole week. I'm going to create a link for you guys to register and a chance to win a copy for you at home, or maybe to share with your teacher, your team. It might honestly would be a great gift if you're a parent to give to a teacher. I know I would love it if I was a teacher in a classroom. So thank you guys again for doing that. I had one quick question. Once you get this pool together, Becky, at your school, what have you found is the best way to communicate with all of these parents who happen to probably have diverse languages as well going on? Do you have any kind of magic tricks that work?
So we do email. That works the best for us, and we also do a paper flyer at the beginning of the year. I use minimal language. I use dates, times, international club, very minimal. I do not explain a lot in the emails, and they've actually said thank you. They appreciate that. Just very minimal. And when we get to the meeting, I think because I'm an ESL teacher, I speak very clearly, and using all of these global skills that I have to speak clearly. We also have several couples who will translate for each other. There'll be like a Chinese corner and like an Indian corner, and the different corners. But I think that the best tool is just to smile and be welcoming, and you'll make everyone feel that it's okay that they're there, even if they're not understanding every word.
Great.
And I want to say that also in International Club, we have Americans who are just interested in global ideas. We have some who have lived abroad. We have this one great family who lived in Saudi Arabia and are back here. We have families who are multicultural families, so the husband's from somewhere and the mom's from somewhere else. We just have families who have always been interested in other cultures, and they would like their kids to learn more. So it's not only people, international families in our club.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to mention too, I found out recently at a PTA conference, is there are actually some restaurants out there who offer curriculum to schools for events where they want to come in and learn about other cultures. So maybe if you happen to be in a school that maybe isn't as diverse as you'd like it to be, that's a great way to pull in your community, because no matter what, in your community there are different pockets that you can find, and they would really love to share with you at your school about it. It might be you hear a little bit about their restaurant and their program, but I'm trying to think of who it was I learned recently. I can't think of it right now, but they even did a free kids meal when they were able to come in your school. I'm like, that's a great evening event to do meals, learn about a culture, and then you can eat, the week later at their restaurant. So there's all sorts of pockets out there to find. It's just finding them and knowing that's a high priority within your school, and really getting the administration on board and getting teachers on board. Do you have any tips for kind of working with principals and getting really the ball rolling on all of this? I know that's a off-the-ball question there.
Well, we talk a lot about that. We talk about gaining sort of allies and how you gain allies. And so early on, involving the administration, and whether you're doing it as a volunteer or as a teacher. I mean, who doesn't want people to take initiative? So sometimes it can be tough, but most of the time it's welcomed. So taking that initiative, and I think just really clear communication, and like Becky says, keeping it simple. And there are lots of other tools out there for creating community. Can be a movie night, as well as a dinner theme. And I have a lot in Growing Up Global about that, and we also have a lot on movies. And discussion around movies that can go in any school with any background. And so you don't have to have as diverse a community as Becky's does, because all those resources are out there to tap into. You could have a Netflix account or a library card, and check out the movies, and then use the discussion guide that we have in the toolkit, or a simpler version of it is in Growing Up Global, and that is an entree to the world, you know, and the principals see, you know, every principal wants the best for their school community. So when they see the positive impact that this creates, it's like, what's there not to love?
Mm-hmm.
You know, your actions will show. They really speak very loudly.
I happen to have just left a volunteer breakfast at school welcoming all the kindergarten parents, and one of the facts that was shared was that the amount of hours at our school would cover 10 full-time teachers. So like when you start to really get resources working and working well, you really can provide so much more for a school, and I think this definitely would be a way to do it. We have one last question that I wanted to ask you guys, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I know you have some key points you want to touch on, and it just was simply, what are ways to integrate a global perspective in the classroom, and then some competencies into your existing lesson plans, and then also, how does Common Core fit into all of this? So, any lasting thoughts? I know we've got just a few more minutes.
I'll touch on it really quick and then Homa can add. We have a chart where we break down, we take specific standards from the Common Core site and we give specific examples of how you can integrate global learning for many, many different standards across from K to 5, K to 5th grade. And so, for example, we have one about there's the math standard where they need to be adding and using a measuring tool. I don't remember what the number is, but that standard. So there's a global project where they're growing tulips, and you actually collaborate with students around the globe to everyone plants their tulips at the same time, and you're measuring them as they go, and you actually get to plot it on an online map, a world map. You know, they're 2 inches, they just bloomed today or whatever happened. And the way the map works, you can see how spring is moving up north, 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 and it turns red. It's very, very cool. And so what we do is we have a whole chart, it's pages long, and we have tons of standards matched with activities that you can use. So that's the Common Core. Homa, do you want to speak to?
Yeah, I was just looking at the book, and starting on page 68, and going through to 79, although it's a whole chapter, are these tables that outline, here's the standard, here's a way to infuse global perspective. One of the tools that I really like is using the Global Competence Matrix, which we teach you how to use in the book. That's something that the Asia Society and the Council of Chief State School Officers developed. And we show how to plug that in. And it's a simple 4-step model. First, how you investigate the world. So you take any issue. Maybe it has to do with studying the rainforest or pollution or families around the world. How do you investigate the world looking at that issue? What are new perspectives? The second one is recognizing perspectives. What are different perspectives on that issue? Third, how do you communicate ideas, possibly in a more creative way, using various kinds of tools? And then fourth, taking action. And the taking action step is something that's really important to us, both for offering time to reflect as well as doing service. And so then we have a whole chapter on how elementary school kids have done service on a global and a local level, and that it's possible to do. So turning your learning into action helps it stick, and that's a big piece for us. So we've seen it. It's possible. You don't have to own a passport to think about the world for your lesson, but you know, we try to make it easy right here.
And I imagine in the book list that you guys have created with over 300 books, you could literally travel the world throughout a school year with your classroom if you just integrate those books into your learning, if that's like just the one first step you can do. And obviously as you go year after year, it all gets easier and it becomes a habit. I know you guys don't even have to think about all this, it just happens. But that's a great basic step to start with. Obviously we want everyone to read your book and get your book. Are there any other resources that you guys want to share right before we leave of places that teachers can turn to for resources for global education?
One that I like is the National Geographic, their new GeoEducator community. That's a great one. And iEarns community is another good one. There are so many, it's really hard to...
I put you on the spot.
Go to Kid World Citizen.
What I'll have all you guys, both of you, do is on our event page, if you want to share links to places where you kind of store that hub of resources to turn to, that would be great. I'm sure you probably pin quite a bit of resources too. I try to on our global board, and I'm sure you do too. So it's just getting the right tools in everybody's hands. But the first step, I think, for everybody who's watching is to grab their book. Great.
Thank you.
Global Education Toolkit. Yeah. Becky, did you have any you wanted to mention?
I'll do a shout out to Project Explorer. I love that. They have lots of videos, and they're aimed at younger kids too. So you can take a video to Mexico and see the pyramids, and they have very cool videos and lessons on there.
Great. All right. Well, we tried to keep it for 30 minutes so you could quickly watch and get all the information you needed. So I just want to say thank you so much to Becky and Houma for taking the time out of your busy schedules at back to school time to share with us this toolkit that I think all teachers need to have in their classrooms and at schools, and even parents. I think being equipped to provide your child with all that they need is really important. Any last words from either one of you?
Thank you, and thanks for the multicultural parents, why am I blanking out? The multicultural blogger network is awesome. So check out all those blogs. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much. And you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and hopefully we'll bring you back again with another guest from the Multicultural Kid Blogger Network. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.